So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to still continue to have people trickling in, but I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Michelle Cover. I am the clinical supervisor for Fairfax County within our human resources and professional development and training team. Fairfax is in Virginia. We're in the northern region of Virginia, so we're considered part of the DMV. So District of Columbia, a little bit of Maryland, and Northern Virginia is our region. And we're part of the metropolitan Washington, D.C. area, and we're a fairly large agency. So I'm a part of our professional and development team, and I focus on providing clinical supervision and training opportunities for our agency staff. So welcome, 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 and thank you for joining me today. I'd like to also introduce my counterpart who's here to support me throughout this presentation. Please welcome Anitsa Wadarama Tiernan. She's a peer group and event specialist, and she will be helping me monitor the chat and also supporting us as we go through some reflective questions and conversation where you'll have an opportunity to participate in some polling exercises and some reflective thinking. So thank you, Anissa, for supporting me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So can we move to the next slide? I wanted to provide you with an agenda for my session. We're going to start with an audience reflection. I'm going to give you a little bit about data in regards to Fairfax County within Virginia, and a little bit of historical data about clinical supervision and what we've done in the past and how that helped us drive what we wanted to do in the future. I'll give you a summary of how we developed our clinical supervision program and what data we pulled that helped us decide the direction that we wanted to go in regards to building our program. So we'll have some data and results that I'll share with you. We'll have some additional audience question and reflection time. I'll talk about how we built the program, what we've learned from building the program and what the impact has been. And at the end, we'll have another reflective question and next steps. Next slide. So here are our learning objectives. I'm hoping that you'll walk away with understanding how clinical supervision can be used as an effective recruitment and retention strategy, which is of course the theme of our seminar today. Having an understanding of what our history has been in Fairfax and how we developed and implemented our program and what our process looked like and how that could reflect in the work that you might be thinking about doing within your region or agency. And then identifying steps that we needed to look at and what you might want to look at in implementing a successful program within your own agencies as well. Okay, next slide. So I always like to start out with an interesting reflective question. This is a quote that I really like. Nothing we do is more important than hiring and developing people. At the end of the day, you bet on people, not just on strategies. And this is from Lawrence Bassetti, who was a former chairman and CEO of Honeywell. So I was wondering what people thought about this quote. If you would like to ponder for about 30 seconds, give yourself some time to think about this quote, and then share your thoughts in the chat, and we'll be able to have a conversation about that. So what are your thoughts about this quote in relation to developing people?
We have a couple of comments. Personnel are our most valuable resource. Could
Mhm.
not agree more. It is the people. I agree. We need to all take time to help develop the growth and learning of our new workers.
Absolutely.
Who are definitely engaging in the chat. This is great.
Awesome. I see a cornerstone for effective leadership. Absolutely. It is about our people. It's a major part of what we do. Absolutely. We build our folks that we work with, the people that we hire. Building relationships are key. Absolutely. Definitely benefits when you invest. Yes, I agree. It's always about the people, training, support, connection. I'm a big connection person. Absolutely. Yes, you'll get more. You'll have people commit and stay longer. Yeah, I see somebody passionate about coaching and developing. So am I. Yes, you'll improve your strategies by, investing in the people and having those personal connections at the job. Yeah, people will serve when they feel connected, and we prioritize the fact that we want them to stay. Yes, it's hard work. Absolutely, Kate. It's hard work. Absolutely. I believe in intentionality, Veronica. Yes, it drives our purpose. Yes, people will stay longer, Susan, and they will become healthier when we invest in them. Positive work culture. Yes, totally agree with you on that. Yeah, we have to take the time to see what will help someone succeed and feel accomplished at their jobs. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that, Amber, around supervision and how we can build connections and develop relationships through that work. Yes, we were just talking about traumatic stress. Susan, that's right. Absolutely. It is another tool to help, you know, address that. Getting the right people for the job, not just filling the position. Absolutely. Right time, right seat, right person. Yes, that will lead to success. These are great, absolutely great reflective thoughts. I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, so in thinking about all those thoughts that you had, and keep putting them in the chat if you have others that you want us to share. Next slide. I like to move to the thought, feelings, and emotions. I'm a CBT girl, so what is how does that feel for you? How does that sit for you when you think about the thoughts that you shared or the thoughts that you're having right now? What resonates for you? I can share with me. I am the gray chair. I'm comfortable with the thoughts that I have about professional development and really investing in people, and I like to sit back in my little gray chair and think about how I can do that. So I'm not straight up, I'm not all stressed, I'm relaxed, and I'm connecting. That's what that gray chair represents for me. Does anybody else want to share in the chat like what chair resonates for you?
You have a few red chairs. Red chair feeling warm and snuggled, connecting with others.
Cool. Feels powerful. Yes.
I'm mostly between the red and the black one. The black one next to it. The beige chair makes me feel relaxed and open to
Oh,
share with others. Oh, I love that.
very cool. Yeah, I never thought about that. That's true. You're very open, definitely.
Bottom right, comfortable and supported.
Yes. Yes. You can turn around in that one.
That's right. I'm loving the small sofa.
Yes, that was my pick. Anybody else? Square black.
Square black. Yeah. I like that one. I
Yeah.
feel like I could probably nap in that one. So very, very comfortable.
Somebody else resonating with the totally lounged chair where you're totally relaxed. Number 3. So I do notice some patterns of where people feel this in their heart, what's comfortable for them. Yes.
I love Amber's comment. The small sofa seems two could sit there and chat, or individually curl up and lounge.
Yeah, I like the footrest idea. Absolutely.
I love that, Mary.
Yes, the red chair looks like a good reading chair, like you're all snuggled in. Absolutely. These are great. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it just makes you think about, this is heart work as well as head work. So sometimes we sit a lot in our cerebral, we're very um, strategic and we think through how we want to intervene and invest, but then there's heart work too. So I kind of wanted to tap into that with the chair symbol. So if you have any other thoughts, feel free to use the chat to express them, and then we'll move to the next slide. Okay, who are we? Fairfax County is a very large county. It's one of the largest counties in our region. We have about 1.1 million residents in Fairfax County, so that gives you an idea of how many people live here. So as of April of this year, we have over 180 languages spoken in Fairfax County, and the number of residents that we have that live here comprise of more people than 8 states combined in the US. So looking at that number, you can see how large that is, and we're very multicultural. We have so many people here that come from other areas with varying backgrounds and languages. We have about 12,000 Fairfax County employees, so that gives you an idea of how many people work within Fairfax County. So there's a lot of people, our workforce is pretty big. We have approximately 1,000 employees within our Department of Family Services, and we're regionalized. So we have 4 regional offices across our county, and we have a central region, which is the office that I work in, which is the main office. We have one in our northern region, which is our Reston office, our southern region in Alexandria, and our eastern region in Annandale. We have various divisions that comprise our service side of our agency. So we have our domestic service and domestic violence services. We have children, youth, and families. We have our PAYS program, which is our benefits program, and our adult and aging program. Just a fun fact, 87% of our workforce are female. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's some interesting data. The other thing I wanted to highlight is we're one of 3 largest agencies in Virginia. So the next largest would be Richmond and Norfolk. So within the department where I work is Human Resources and Professional Development and Training. And we're responsible for partnering within our agency and divisions to deliver training opportunities, identifying needs within our agency to develop professionals, whether it's senior folks, brand new professionals, our interns, and supporting our management, our supervisors around professional development opportunities and performance management. So that's really what I do within my role. Next slide. So a little national data. So NICWE put out a report recently around our turnover rates, and I think this is something that we see across the nation, between 15 to 20% turnover rates annually, and this is probably higher depending on where you're coming from. So our agencies are facing quite a challenge in being able to retain staff. And that, I think all of us can agree that that got amplified during COVID-19. We saw a lot of um, turnover, people really redefining what was important to them, thinking about the future or in terms of their profession and what that was valuable to them in terms of where they wanted to go. So hiring and retention has hit a all-time high in challenging us as professionals and figuring out how we want to support the staff, how we want to build them, and how we want to invest in them. In addition to that, I think our agency recognized that we weren't getting the feedback that we needed. And I think Annie E. Casey has an article that talks about being able to, it's called 5 Steps to a Stronger Child Welfare Agency. And it talks about making sure you're getting information from your staff on a regular basis. So as an agency, we took that on and decided we need to implement a way to receive information from our staff that's meaningful on the things that are important to them. That really helps us enhance our commitment to them and helps us show them that we are listening and want to know what's important to them. Next slide. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to talk this through because I don't have the data on here, but we have implemented an exit survey through our human resources department. And part of that exit survey, we were able to get results related to what people were expressing to us that were important to them. So I'm going to give you a summary of the feedback that we received. And this is an annual, we also run an annual survey as well as exit surveys to receive that information. So on our exit survey, this was the theme that we were hearing. The agency needs to be equitable when providing clinical services and clinical hours to supervisees. People waiting for clinical supervision, we're taking too long and we're on the waiting list for too long. Getting clinical hours was important to me in my new position, and I felt like I didn't have access to that. Direct clinical supervision should be a focus in my work as a new staff. Managing what I needed in clinical supervision sometimes felt like it wasn't a priority for the agency. Finishing my clinical license was not a priority because I didn't get clinical hours and it was not an opportunity for me to access. I'm looking for a change so that I can focus more on my clinical work. So we were consistently seeing themes through our exit surveys and through our employment annual survey that this was a concern and a need for our staff. Next slide. We decided as a result of those exit survey results and information from our annual survey that we compiled that we wanted to do a pulse check within our own agency around what clinical supervision actually looked like at that time. So this was back in August of 2021. Our staff, in partnership with our data analytics team, came up with a survey to really scratch the surface and find out what's really out there and what are people experiencing. So we delivered 346 surveys, and we got back 226 responses. So our response rate was around 65%. 24% of the respondents were currently receiving clinical supervision, and 4% already had their provisional license. 31 of those respondents were in the process of obtaining their license, and 81 respondents indicated they were interested in pursuing their clinical supervision. Next slide. So this is a summary of the data. So as you can see, this is what people were able to tell us in that survey about the importance of clinical supervision to them. So 90% of the respondents felt like it would help build their promotional opportunities in the future. 86% believed that it would help support their clinical work, and 81% felt like it would help develop their competencies in the work that they were doing. And then you see that 42% were thinking it would help them build a private practice in the future. So if you look at this data, you really see the importance around professional development, clinical support, and building competency as the key importance to staff. Next slide. So we then also asked a question about how important it was for staff to have this as a resource and available to them, have it at their fingertips as an important option for them. And looking at the data, you can see 65% of the respondents felt that it was very important and 20% a little lower than very important. But if you look at 65%, that's a significant number in informing us that this was a priority that we needed to pay attention to. Next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past. And this might mimic something that has happened in your own agency or organization. We didn't have a consistent way of monitoring clinical supervision, and it was at the, the individual clinical supervisor's decision to decide whether they were going to offer it or not within each unit. So what we learned was we didn't have consistency. There was no equity around who would have access and who didn't. So you were at the mercy of being hired into the right unit with the right supervisor willing to provide clinical supervision for their staff. We have over 15 teams or more within our division that were client facing, with supervisors few and far between with the L.C.S.W. able to provide some supervision to their staff. So we didn't really see a significant enough impact within the division to provide the support that our staff were saying that they needed. So what was happening, very informal unit access and supervisory experiences where the supervisor was willing to provide L.C.S.W. supervision. It wasn't coordinated and it wasn't consistent. So we really felt like we needed to address this to mitigate the inequities that we were seeing across all of our divisions. The long wait lists, we had a wait list that we developed, and people had been on that wait list for 3-4 years waiting for an opportunity to receive clinical supervision. In response to that, our agency developed a new position called an enrichment and engagement coordinator, and that person was responsible for providing clinical supervision in addition to a hodgepodge of myriad of other things that they were responsible for. So to break down the data, 30% of that person's responsibility was project development, really implementing projects from the division level and director level. Internship development, which was 30% of their job responsibility, and 25%, which is clinical supervision. So if you look at how their responsibility was divvied up, there wasn't much of a direct bulk of their work that was focused on clinical supervision. And they had 15% of their job responsibilities around training and development across the agency. The position really focused on leading and implementing organizational learning strategies, programs, and projects, and less on clinical supervision solely. What we learned from that is that we really needed to bolster that. We needed to have more of a presence in providing clinical supervision for our staff across all of the agency. We wanted more opportunities for staff to have access to clinical supervision. Next slide. So all of you probably have an idea of why clinical supervision is so important. I wanted to highlight this. And And this is what really drove the reason why we really pursued this. So the purpose of to the purpose of a license to practice clinical social work is is recognized nationally as a pathway to acquire and develop specialized practice skills. So we all need those skills to provide quality services. And I think as an agency, we recognize that that was important to us. Clinical supervision supports the development of professionals that can succeed within human services. So we are all committed to providing the best quality care for the communities where we come from and provide those human services that we all believe are important and in line with our code of ethics. And we know the pathway to doing that is providing quality supervision, and clinical supervision is a part of that. So as an agency, we agreed these are the things that are important to us. We value staff who are able to critically think, who are self-reflective, who have cultural humility as part of their practice. Ethics was important to us in making sure that we're ethically responsible for our work, we're trauma informed, and we're investing in professional growth and development opportunities. We overall wanted to improve our staff competencies around their knowledge, their attitudes, and the quality of their work. And that's what we felt clinical supervision could do for our staff within our agency. The benefits of retention and recruitment, of course, is around all the things that I talked about. But in addition to that, really focusing on the individual development of of the people that we work with. You know, the client relationship gets enhanced. People use their work appropriately when they really have that support around building those clinical skills, knowledge of social work theory and principles, and how we implement that day to day, formulating, you know, therapeutic strategies and safety planning and treatment planning in a way that makes sense, and committing to our own perception of what professional development looks like within a clinical supervision model. So those are the things that we felt were valuable and important, and what we all know data-wise, what clinical supervision can bring to the table. Next slide. So we're going to do a poll together. I wanted to break up me talking all the time and have you participate a little bit in the poll.
So we're going to be using Poll Everywhere to hear from you. All you have to do is put the link that is going to be put in the chat. You just click that link and you'll be able to access the poll. And when we move forward, you'll be able to just answer the questions, excuse me, directly from your device. So it's Poll Everywhere. And if for whatever reason you are unable to join us in the Poll Everywhere platform, we invite you to actually answer the questions in the chat, and we'll gather your comments as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put the chat link again. Oh, thank you. And feel free to click and it'll take you to the poll.
Thank you, Anitza. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to participate in the poll. I'll give you, 30 or so seconds, and hopefully we'll be able to review the results together.
I love seeing the numbers and the bars changing.
Yes.
So the first question is, does your agency currently have a clinical supervision program? And it looks like the majority answered no, but we had 27% of our respondents saying yes.
Okay, wow. Okay, that's interesting. So the bulk of the folks that are part of our session today do not have a clinical supervision program.
We're starting to slow down a bit on the responses, but we're 27 to 73.
Gotcha. Thank you all so much for participating in the poll. This is really interesting information.
And a few folks have answered in the chat. and a couple of no's. And we do have a question. I had a question before this one that asked what the barrier was to implementing this program.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into that a little bit. Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Okay, somebody can't get into the poll. Do you want to just answer in the chat?
And we have a few people that are definitely answering in the chat.
Gotcha.
Few
Thank
more.
you.
Mhm. Great. And you can let us know when you want us to move to the next one.
Absolutely. I wanted to make sure that people get a chance to answer in the chat. There's still stuff coming in.
Yeah, lots of engagement.
Yeah, thank you so much for your participation. I think it's telling for all of you to also to see this data live. Okay. So we have a little bit of a lull, so we're gonna move to our second question. So if you don't have a clinical supervision program, what would you consider to be a major barrier to building this program within your organization and agency? I'm just interested, you know, what your thoughts are about that. I'm gonna have to depend on you and helping me with the chat.
Absolutely. We have a few people in the chat saying limited current LCSWs,
Ah, okay.
lack of funding,
Mhm,
administrative changes, licensure is not required for the job,
mhm.
funding a position specifically for this, staff
Staff
capacity.
capacity.
Mhm. Yes, lack of LCSWs to provide supervision, lack of organization, very few LCSWs to provide supervision. The number of available LCSWs seems to be a
That
theme.
seems to be a theme. Yeah.
Funding in time.
Yes.
License is not required for the job. We had another person, enter that in the chat as well.
Okay. I see a lot of themes with not a lot of leadership support.
Mhm. Natasha says we promote an evidence-based coaching program so all supervisors can learn it and provide it rather than just LCSW, a way to manage not having an LCSW.
Okay.
And W. Collins said maintaining LCSW certified in the position, supervisors take on the role in their absence.
Gotcha. No one wants to do it if they're not getting paid. Right. Right. So pay seems to be a theme as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the lack of LCSW, the pay, the time, seems like some of the trends that we're seeing too in the chat.
Absolutely. Okay, it seems like things have slowed down a bit there. There's one more.
So Lori says, although we have many licensed social workers, not having the requirement creates few opportunities for those with license in a pool of many with other degrees. That's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Gotcha. Some like to watch new social workers join our workforce. It's a payoff for us.
We had a comment and poll everywhere saying their license is on the line. So that's another interesting
Okay,
response.
so like the liability piece.
Mhm. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you're looking at this, you can see some of the, the main themes that could become a barrier or are a barrier for individuals about considering this within their own organization and agency. And these are some of the things that I was seeing and our agency saw as well across our region and in other jurisdictions as well. So right in line with what's out there. I'm the only LCSW in my agency. I pay for everything on my own, but expected to supervise many. Yeah, that's a lot. The field of child welfare is not always seen as clinical. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely changing though. Thank you all so much for participating and giving me that feedback. That's very helpful. And I think helpful for all of you that are here to see what are some of the common themes that we're seeing. So do you want to move to the next slide? So in thinking about shaping what we wanted to see happen in Fairfax, we really wanted to align our vision for clinical supervision with our own agency mission, vision, and values. What was important to us as an agency, and how did clinical supervision align with that? Um, so we wanted clinical supervision to be person-focused, that we wanted to strengthen our workforce with this approach, which would then enhance the work that we were doing to serve our community. Next slide. So these are the things that we actually looked at before we even started implementation. We benchmarked who's doing this. And when you saw the poll earlier, it was a 73, I think 25% split. There's not a lot of people out there that's looking at developing a formalized clinical supervision program. And our benchmarking activities included looking at other large agencies such as ourselves within Virginia, Maryland, DC, and outside of that, reaching out to our partners across the nation, and we really didn't have another blueprint to follow. So as an agency, our agency director, who's also a clinician, really felt that this was a priority, and he decided with partners within our agency across the divisions that we work within that this was a priority. And we used that based on the data we were receiving from human resources in our exit surveys and our annual survey, as well as the feedback we received when we delivered the survey to our staff about clinical supervision. So we really use data to drive us, as well as benchmarking around what was happening across our region and other jurisdictions. We developed a planning team which comprised of our agency director, our division directors, our data analytics team, and representation across all of the divisions that was diverse, as well as in different positions of authority. So we had supervisors, managers, staff, data analytics, and various agency manage positions in power to be able to make decisions related to how we wanted this to look. And our biggest challenge, which all of you have talked about, was looking at the positions that where were we going to find the positions that could be dedicated to be doing this. And we had to be very creative in looking at what positions really we could reconstitute to focus on clinical supervision, and that included having human resources at the table and looking at data on where we could pull a position that could refocus us to address this need. Repurposing and adjusting the positions within our agency was one of the first steps we took. And developing a plan of action around how we were going to have stakeholders at the table, our supervisors, our managers, our staff, and our division directors, and communicating our plan together. Our next step was, once we were able to identify positions that we could repurpose to be full-time, we also looked at the previous position I mentioned, our engagement and enrichment coordinator, and repurposed her position to refocus on clinical supervision. Those were the two main things that we looked at first. And then we decided on how we were going to address our local policy. We did not have a consistent documented policy that everybody could abide by around purpose, eligibility, process, and expectations. So our team sat down together and really carved out what was important to us about clinical supervision, how it could enhance our work, and how it was tied to our overall agency mission, vision, and values, and what would the outcome look like to let us know that we were successful. After we developed our local policy and procedures, That's when we developed our implementation plan. And that looked like hiring for the position, the new position that we were able to repurpose. And that was a position I matriculated into. My position and our enrichment and enhancement, enrichment position that I talked about, reconstituting that position as well. As far as we knew, there were no other agencies doing it at this level. And we were really embarking on a new way of being able to consider clinical supervision as part of our professional development teamwork. We developed a 90-day action plan that really focused on timelines and strategies that we wanted to implement within clinical supervision. So we had one full-time position and one part-time position that was already existing that we tweaked. And the part-time position focused on clinical supervision at 50%, our internship program at 30%, and professional and project development and training at 20%. Next slide. So as I spoke of earlier, we tied what we were looking at to our mission, vision, and values. This was our mission, that our team will achieve the mission of developing a culture of effective clinical practice by enhancing staff development and professional development and growth opportunities, and designing an L.C.S.W. clinical supervision that would be a model for other people to follow and sustain and to preserve the work that we're trying to do. Next slide. Our vision, of course, in every division of the Department of Family Services, every interaction between individuals, families, practitioners will reflect an agency culture of effective clinical practice, and that our agency would become a model agency reflecting a culture of effective clinical practice. Next slide. And we tied it to our values: people-focused, equity. Next slide. Accountability, partnership. Next slide. And innovation. Next slide. Audience questions. Any similarities, differences? You know, how would the journey be similar or different for you? Any thoughts about developing something like this within your agency? Feel free to share in the chat.
And Michelle just wanted to let us know we've made it to 2:00, so some folks may be leaving the session.
Okay, no
But
problem.
we will make sure to share the recordings.
Sure. So real quick, if we want to move to the next slide. What we learned is we wanted to make sure we had equity within the work that we were doing, that we were clear with our communication plan, we were balancing competing demands, and that we were addressing the regional needs of our agency. And we were taking into consideration how flexible clinical supervision could be. Next slide. What could you do? You only need one person. So thinking about whether you could dedicate one person to provide L.C.S.W. supervision and what that might look like, and how you could build agency support and authorization to do that, how you could address local policy that could be equitable, and structure the work to consider professional development part of supervision and L.C.S.W. focused. Incentives is another way that you could be creative. Next slide. You could start with one person who could do 10 to 20% committed to providing 5 to 8 people with supervision. You know, your next hire of a supervisor focused on recruiting for an L.C.S.W. to do that. Or you could do formal like we did, where you have 2 dedicated people, one person doing it at 80%, another person doing it at 60%. And you could see the comparisons of how many people you could reach in providing clinical supervision. So the base model and the premium model. Next slide. So what we did as next, what we're going to do is consistently communicate our strategy around the importance of building people through clinical supervision, implementing an online training platform so people could get the clinical hours they need for training, spotlighting what we're doing every week, and developing training events like ethics trainings, trauma trainings, related to the work that we're doing and how it's impacting us clinically, and monitoring and evaluating our work. Next slide. Reflective question. I know we're at the end, but when you're thinking about this particular strategy as a retention and recruitment possibility, what's one thing you could do as an agency that you could take back with you? So that's the end of my presentation. We had to kind of run through it, but I wanted to thank you for being a part of this. I am available to you. Next slide. If you have questions or concerns, or you want to get more information about what we did and how we did it, my number is here on the slide. You can reach out to me. I think my PowerPoint deck will be available to all of you if you wanted to get that information for yourself, or you can email me and we could chat about some ideas that you could have for your own agency or organization. And I guess we'll see you at our next session. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We got some great comments in the chat. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.